Shalom, and welcome to the Remnant Radio Show, where we're living and learning a restoration lifestyle. Today, we're doing a special series on this particular thing that is going around the world. And we're trying to keep up on YouTube long enough not to be censored. As you know, your news media, now your social media, any kind of YouTube newsletters, etc., websites are being censored. And it's getting more and more since we are now announcing it in mainstream media here in the USA. So this is a special thing. We're going to talk about preparation. And my special guest is Suzette Robinson. And Suzette, I'm just going to let you tell us, you really have a background in preparedness. And we did a preparedness show years ago, but you have been doing this for many years. So give us a little bit of a background.
Yes. I believe for me, it's just been a part of my personality, my makeup, the way Yah called me. I've always been that person who kind of thought that way. Sorry. I was in the military and kind of an outdoorsy girl a little bit growing up. And so he really gave me, even kind of before Torah, he gave me the preparedness list, which we used for the class. And it's just been, it's intrinsic to me. I don't know any other way than to describe it that way. It could have been maybe growing up with a single mom who worked hard and we struggled a little bit. But I've always had to learn how to adapt and do things differently or adjust or make do. And maybe that's part of it as well. And I'm naturally curious, I guess, and I like a lot of information. So
Okay.
the things we know, and
Well, before,
sorry, go on.
No, let's just for a minute, let's back up for just a second. So for those, because we're going to do this, but we're really focusing on what's happening around the world today on this particular world situation. But you have, is it Painted Tongue?
Correct, .com.
.com. You do have the PDF available for preparedness list, and that is, if you also go to remnantremedy.com and go down to radio shows and look for preparation skills for the Remnant Bride, you'll go there, and we did a total of 32 shows. But yes, go down there, and you'll also have links and information and radio shows on preparation that we did back in 2014. So you can get a lot of written information and more audio with more details than what we're going to be able to cover, because we're really going to focus on what's going on in the world situation right now.
Yes,
so
that was
ahead.
a really long series, and we never even finished the whole thing. We had more to go.
No.
So we know that it is the P word, which nobody wants to say, and who will not declare, even though we are at phase 6. And there is a criteria for that. You can look it up. It's kind of vague. Now they've decided they are not going to use that terminology anymore. One of the things that I've heard, and sorry, I don't have a source, that 1 out of the 2 cargo ships from China are not coming. We do know it's been reported several resources, 97% of our antibiotics in the U.S. come from there. That's a big thing. Now, some of us, we try to avoid the use of those things, but that's still going to have a major impact on the medical industry and on certain things that people may need them for. Some studies are showing that it can live up to 9 days on surfaces, and some are showing asymptomatic incubation up to 27 days. The standard Q word is 14 days, but there was one gentleman in China who they found 27 days after his exposure that he was still asymptomatic and had the virus. And we know that now it's multi-millions. We don't know how many are quarantined in different places around the world. Early on, there were already industries shutting down. Apple, Nissan, Hyundai, Fiat, McDonald's, Starbucks, Adidas, because either parts or if there were like the restaurants and things in those affected areas, they had to close because obviously people are not going to work. The supply chain is the big buzzword now, and they're openly admitting that this is a problem. And we know that they tried to keep that down for a long time and prop up the markets, which now have begun to fall. if you,
Well, let's back up just a minute, Suzette. Maybe we should explain for the first-time listeners that this really happened. If you really dig enough, the main thrust of this particular outbreak came right around Sukkot and thereafter, but really wasn't hitting the hidden news until November, December.
right.
So it's been going on for quite a long time. And so it's just now making its way. So for a lot of people, they just now are hearing about it, right?
They've really tried
Okay.
to keep it under wraps. And I think alternative news and people, Facebook and social media, have turned that where, people used to rely on the mainstream news, and now they know that these other venues are out there, and now they are trying to take care of that, which we've seen. Deleted videos, buzzwords that get your things demonetized, shut down. So we know that some supplies are already in short stock. We have that just-in-time system that is also for our food. And I can tell you that our local grocery store, it's a major grocery store, it's been around since I was a child and before, has been widening the aisles. Now, there used to be in the fresh produce section, it was so cramped that it was hard to get your cart around. And I took a picture last week when I went shopping before Shabbat, and there is a size, like the size of my living room, where they just don't have anything, and they're closing the gaps.
Oh, they're widening because there's not enough supply
Correct.
of food.
And other
Okay.
things in the story, you can see this is, shrinkflation. We know this has been happening. And overseas, in the place of the main outbreak, they have suffered several things in the last year or so. They have been suffering from African swine fever, pig Ebola. 70% of their pork production was killed or culled or died from this very serious plague. They bought Smithfield Farms in America, and we're now shipping pork over to China to help feed them. That is their number one source of protein. So they have, over 1 billion people to feed. Their number one source of protein is gone for the most part. It was more than the entire pork production in the U.S. altogether. They also
their main protein supply was that, and not say
what I had heard
soybean?
that it was pork. Now that may be not correct,
Okay, I just wondered. Okay,
and
interesting.
so over in Asia, they've had the African swine fever. It has spread to some of the other countries, but it mainly hit China. And they also have now the locust plague, which started in Africa and has spread all the way across to China. One of the statistics was they eat the equivalent of the entire population of France in a day. So we've had pig Ebola taking out the protein, and then the locust taking out the crops. You have the coronavirus, and some of these things are all explainable with a natural solar cycle that happens every so many hundred years called the grand solar minimum. And this is common in grand solar minimum: pandemic, earthquakes, volcanoes, plagues. There's more cosmic radiation coming in, which alters DNA. So if they had, and we know that they also released the newest cellular technology in China, in Wuhan, in that area. So if
It's called
okay,
right?
there we go.
G, A, B, C, D, F, G. Okay.
Yes. If we can, we know this was lab made. There's HIV homology. Dr. Paul Cottrell in New York, he's been studying the virus a lot. He's covered that. He said it sounds like the perfect machine. It's high replication on one end and very high insertion on the other end. And there's HIV homology, and there's other things in it. Most people that really know the genomic stuff say it cannot have happened naturally. And then you've got the G, and
You got the G.
you got the G.
5 squad.
Yeah.
Quad, is that a quad? What quint? The quint G.
Yes. So, And on top of that, we have an increase in cosmic radiation because of the decrease in the electromagnetic shielding on the Earth, because during a grand solar minimum, that reduces, which does cause higher radiation. We're seeing UVC at ground level in some places. They're recording that. And that does mutate DNA. So if they had this lab created, this is just my own theory. This is, if you have the 5 alphabet and a lab created thing such as this, plus you have the natural thing that the Father put in place of this cycle, and all of that combined at once, they may have thought whatever the reason it got out, or they put it out. And see, those are things we don't know. Did it escape, or was it on purpose? It could be getting, yes.
Well, let me just say here, one thing I would like to point out, because this is something that a lot of people will bring up, is, they're all into, okay, it was man-made, it might have been planted, and which, without a doubt, I pretty much believe that. But whether it's man-made, whether it escaped, whether it was purposely put out, which I think they did, and I think they've done it in all kinds of different ways in different countries to attack different genetics for each region. But we have to remember that nothing happens, whether it looks like by accident or by man, that has not crossed before the throne of Yahweh.
Absolutely.
Before it happened. So he really truly is sovereign in the whole thing. And he knows what man's going to happen. If we look at back historically, it's the same way. Events, whether they were man-made, done by evil, whatever, they happen for a reason and a purpose, and they were always for the greater purpose of usually freeing his people. So
absolutely, he is sovereign, and he put the cycles and the natural order in place at creation, and he also knew what man was going to do. So I fully believe this is not his work, but he will use it to the benefit of his purposes and his plans, right, and for his people. And it also, we know that Scripture says that what you sow, you reap. So usually, like a false accusation, what you plan or attempt for someone comes back on your own head. So are we seeing some of that happening with what they were developing over there? Not that innocent people are not suffering, and that's horrid.
Yes.
Because wicked people do bad things and make evil plans. Innocent people suffer. And that's very unfortunate.
Yes. And so I recommend you read Psalm 37 and memorize it. Go ahead.
So
fret not thyself because of evildoers, and goes on and on. Put your mind on that for a while. Besides, what is it, Psalm 91? Yeah.
So we'll get into the practical stuff, the fighting viruses. Now, there's a lot of general information everybody knows. Proper hygiene, rest, nutrition, wash your hands, cover your mouth when you cough or you sneeze, don't touch your face, avoid contact with infected people, don't infect others, and stay home if you're sick. Some of these things people really fight. Like, how much of industry and business says just stay home if you're sick? It's not, and if your paycheck is only if you show up, some people just really don't have a choice. Let's think about this in a deeper term, though. If you think about your daily routine, you get up, you shower, you get ready for work, you get dressed, you go out the door, you drive your car, you got your cell phone, your computer, your keys, you go to the office. All of those things we're very used to, especially cell phones and purses, being in contact. People take them in the bathroom. People take them, you set them on all different surfaces. I mean, Monk, right? He was the OCD guy. He would be crazy, right? But people don't consider, I just went into the public restroom and I was on my phone and I had to set it down to finish. And I set it on the, the toilet paper holder or whatever. And then they just pick up and then I went to dinner and I set it on the table. Those are the kind of actions that in this kind of a situation can literally be lethal. So we have to consider loving our neighbor. And are you being smart and saying, okay, like when we travel, and I know Lysol and chemicals are not good. And some of the things in here I'm going to talk about are going to be, antibiotics or chemicals or Lysol or cleaner or Clorox. there's always
Okay.
natural versions of that, and those are
Yes.
things that we want to go towards. But
And we're going to cover that later.
Yes.
So, yeah.
If you can wipe those things down on a regular basis, or at least, okay, you took your phone in the bathroom, minimally,
Yeah.
clean it.
Well, clean your phone more often. I mean, really, a lot of people just keep a disgusting phone.
Yes.
So how do you clean your phone? People need to do it more often, just like their hands. What do they do?
Myself, I make my own glass cleaner, which I use half rubbing alcohol and half water, sometimes a stronger alcohol concentration. And I've done that for years. And I just take a soft rag and spray it down, and then wipe the phone with the rag, so you don't spray the phone. And I just do that. I probably do that a couple times a day, just because I carry it all over.
Okay. So for those people who think they're going to go to essential oils to spray their phone, you might want to do the case or something. But the bottom line is your essential oils are going to disintegrate and are volatile and will tear up the plastic and the
Right.
stuff on the phone. So you're rubbing alcohol or possibly a hydrosol. I mean, we could maybe get into tea tree hydrosols and stuff like that, but it's still, they're going to have a certain percentage of essential oil that's going to tear that up. The other thing you could use is hydrogen peroxide, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't think that's going to, I actually put it on a clean rag or tissue and then wipe instead
Right.
of putting it directly on the phone. So, so don't go crazy, you EO people.
Yes, because I'm a 100% fan of essential oils, but there are some things like alcohol dries fast. So if I got a used book at a thrift store or something, I come home and it gets wiped because it dries quickly and it doesn't leave a damage. But I know people read in the bathroom. I'm going to clean that before I put it in my home. So
Right. It also helps get the mold off, and that's why they clean screens and things on computers with rubbing alcohol, because in your keyboard is because it dries very quickly.
And it doesn't
alcohol.
generally do damage to most surfaces.
Yeah.
So,
So that's one of the things you want to stock up on
yes. And
before
that is,
it's out, because it's already, I think, becoming a problem for hydrogen peroxide and rubbing alcohol in stores.
yes, that has been recommended by everybody from the beginning, rubbing alcohol, rubber gloves, masks. So the personal hygiene, think about the things you touch, like your belt. A lot of people may not think about that. What's the first thing you usually touch when you go to the bathroom if you're a belt wearer? Your belt buckle. We know that they're also saying it can be spread fecally. So, where do you put that belt? When you touch the belt, do you touch it, after you've washed, and then do you go touch, these are just things that we don't usually think about and we're not usually mindful of, but these are things we might have to consider to try to avoid contracting this.
One of the things that's been brought to my attention recently is that, which, I kind of get because I've wondered about it, is especially like if you go to airport toilet or like Disney World toilet or, some big public place, when you flush that toilet, that water goes everywhere, right?
Right.
And so it was brought to my attention that just on normal toilets, when you flush that toilet, there is things that release. So one of the things you can do is put your toilet seat down before you flush the toilet, and then have your spice, these plus oregano or tea tree or whatever it is you have that we'll talk about, or we have puts the information in some of our newsletters and things, is that you spray that and keep your toilet clean, more than you would have before. Spray the area around.
Yep.
And especially in public ones, stand up, get away from that toilet.
Flush and
try,
run.
A lot of them you don't have a toilet seat cover, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm like standing by the door with my foot out trying to flush. But as this takes hold, and if it takes hold in this country, and we don't want to wait till it takes hold,
No.
do these things now. So go ahead.
Right. No, and I totally agree. And in fact, we have little signs that in the house that say close the lid before you flush. And they're proof of that, because it can sound kind of weird. And so, oh yeah, you're just being funny. But I think 20 feet of spray or something was some of the testing, but it's been a long time. But if you have a toilet lid that you've done that for a long time, you can look at the backside and it will have a gray brown discoloration after years, like a white seed and a white lid. You'll see that it's discolored from the years of catching the spray from the flushing.
So can I tell you a funny story?
Yes.
A couple of years ago, I was visiting my daughter in Florida, and we went to Disney World. And those toilets are just super mega strong toilets. And I was trying to put the paper on it, before I sat down. And then, so then you have all these automated things that trigger, your motions, etc. So as soon as I get that all down there, and I stand up to turn around to use it, and boom, it takes the paper down, and it's spraying. And it was a fiasco. It was a comedy show by the time I finally got to use that. But that was what really made me, because the water's spraying out, and I hadn't even used the bathroom yet.
Right.
So you guys really, use the bathroom as much as you can at home. Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes you can avoid some of that spray by putting the paper in it. The auto flushers.
On the top? Gotcha.
Yeah, just, the auto flushers sometimes, because you can watch it shooting up out onto the seat and stuff. Yeah. So, so surfaces, that's a big thing. Public transportation. That's like I roll and faint. My daughter lives in Boston. One of my daughters lives in Boston, and she takes public transportation to and from work. I don't know. You have to be diligent with your hygiene. You have to wash, you have to watch what you're touching, go home. If you are in a highly infected area or there's a breakout, you may want to go home. Like when we travel, I keep a can of Lysol in the car. And when we go in and use the public restroom, we spray the bottoms of our shoes before we get back in the car.
You're bringing it back in.
Yeah, and so I like to kick my shoes off in the car, and like ladies, we put our purses on the floor, right? And then maybe we've gone to the public restroom in a gas station, no less, and we put our purse down there, and then we come over to somebody's house, or we come home, we put it on the kitchen table or on the countertop. In our house, we have nothing that is on the floor goes on a countertop or surface.
Right.
That's a thing we just practice here.
Well, and then don't forget all the door handles everywhere
Yes.
you go. Even in your own house, people coming in and out. They've been on the outside world. You're inside thinking you're being, reducing your risk, and then people come in the door. So
And light switches.
I assume you're going to talk about that. A lot more showers, a lot more cleaning after you've been outside in the world and come back. And the thing is we're trying to get you to understand to do this now, before your options are so much worse that it becomes paranoia, and you just have to constantly. People who have suffered from mold exposure live like this all the time.
Wow.
So
I could see that. Yeah. Yes, you may have to come home, spray the shoes, take the coat off, the laptop bag, spray things down, wipe them down, derobe, have a place where you can disrobe. The clothes go in the go in the laundry. You shower. Depending on the environment you work in, that may become necessary to help stave this off. And money. We know that in China there's videos of them spraying the money down. Now that sounds like an excuse to go cashless, but we know we're not really looking for that either. We don't want to push for a cashless society in general.
Right. But, if you think about it, if you really start just thinking about the repercussions of this, being a pandemic, it can change so many ways we do everything in this life down to exactly what they want, and people are going to do it because they don't want to die, or it's going to be the law.
Yep.
And you will suffer persecution, which will include vaccinations, all kinds of things. So it's a reckoning day. People need to start waking up. And if it becomes a big issue, and the powers to be right now think that America needs to fall too, like China, then oops.
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It is something to really wake up to and really pray. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to balance between being common sense, logical, diligent physically, but at the same time praying and trusting the Father, right? Because really, and on one hand, we all got to die of something. And it's really not so much this plague that is happening that concerns me. Because if we're going to die, we're going to die. But we do want to prevent it We do want to do physically everything that we can and spiritually we can, and as Suzette goes through this list. But really, the bigger issues that I see is how our entire world is going to change. Just like after the 9/11 thing happened, laws went into effect, that things changed. A lot of avenues of our life. And that's the same thing that we're looking at here. And these were pre-written in books. I mean, I read a kid's series here, Swipe, Sneak, etc. And a lot of this is very similar to what were in those books. And what's happened in Wuhan was actually written basically in a book in 1981. A lot of people don't know that. So you're really gonna have to stay close to the Father and the Holy Spirit, but at the same time be diligent, wake up and educate yourself to do what you can do, because that's all we really can do, is what we can do, guided by His Spirit, and to be diligent about both sides of that physical and spiritual realms. So
yes, faith. I would never want someone to think that I rely on what I do or the steps I take. Ultimately, the Father and the Son are the only hope. If you think about the way that this thing spreads and the incubation time and all of that, but nevertheless, he raised up Joseph's and he raised up Noah's, and we need to still be diligent. Plus,
there was the ark prepared, right?
Right. I don't want to be responsible for getting someone else sick. That's the other thing, and if I become ill, God forbid, or someone in my family, I don't want to end up in their place where they want sick people to go. So,
no,
but
absolutely.
I mean, there's, if, everybody running a sniffle or a fever is, stopped on a roadblock or something and they're taken, I don't want to be that person. So staying healthy and maintaining good health and hygiene is, if it nothing else, but it avoids that, I feel good.
Right.
But
which is the reason, one of the reasons we want to say this right now is and I don't know if you're going to go into this part, but we need to know that we need to be taking care of our bodies and our terrain, start building up our immune system, start eating better, get rid of the sugar and the things that are going to make your body acidic. So there's a couple things going here. You're going to be preparing your body to be ready to endure what's coming. You need to prepare physically. You need to prepare spiritually. So these are, so we're just trying to give you ideas and things to think about, do, consider. And as an older generation, I know she's not quite as old as I am, but things that we just know to do. Right. And do on a daily basis, that we were growing up in hygiene and conscientious of disease. I see younger people, they don't have a clue. So many people I know already with what we've discussed will go, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. And all we're trying to do as the older women is say, hey, here's some things you need to know about. So anyway, go ahead,
Definitely.
Suzette, sorry.
No. Workplace and public spaces. So again, the doors, the phones, the computer, public restrooms, airports, hotels, travel destinations, shoes, coat, clothes, phone, bathrooms, keys, shopping carts. You have to think about where you're putting your things, what you're touching, and what you're taking home or exposing your family to. All of those surfaces are subject to carrying the infection from the accounts that we're getting for a while. At home, say, God forbid somebody were to get sick, but do you share a toothbrush cup? Do you share the same tube of toothpaste? Those are things you would have to think about, if someone looks like they're getting ill, or if you want to really, separate that out before a problem happens, you might maybe want to, divide that out. Disinfect with Spice Thieves or Lysol or wipes or cleaner. Again, we try to go with the natural because we know the chemical can have some ill effects, but maybe you're going to use both. Maybe there's going to be, you can't get one, you have to use the other. We have to be flexible enough to do what we can do with what we have. Shower and bathe. We shouldn't have to say that. And this is going to come, I apologize for offending anyone, but, sometimes just that basic thing of bathing, getting the stuff off your skin, like if you get poison ivy, you have to physically remove the oils from your skin. It's like a lubricant grease almost, and it's clear, but it can stay on surfaces and get you again. So that's one of the things is mechanically removing it. And I know that washing of your hands and washing your body, washing your clothes, we want to take the virus or the contaminants out of our personal area. Wash your clothes. Clipped fingernails. That's another thing. We ladies like our long nails. I don't. I farm. But they said that Dr. Paul Cottrell had said, he mentioned this, that, it can be carried under your nails, and people are not really good about some hygiene. And ladies sometimes can have, not so much amongst more religious inclined people, but sometimes people can be really geared towards fashion over sensibility and function and hygiene.
Right.
And you have to think about
Not
that.
sometimes, probably a lot of times. Especially in the non-religious. But yeah, I mean, even then. So yeah, we got to learn to be practical, because this is a really serious matter. Yeah.
Right. Do you have separate dirty clothes hampers and clean clothes baskets? Think about, especially if you got a potty training child. I mean, as a mom, we all know the nightmares of when your kid is potty training. I don't want my dish towels and dishwash cloths in a basket where the training potty pants were. These are things that are just intrinsic, like I said, to our lifestyle, but a lot of people don't
your
consider
husband's
that.
work clothes, or especially someone who works outside the home,
Right.
Even if they don't do dirty work,
Right.
You might want to consider their exposure. Don't let the laundry store up for a long time, right?
Right. Yeah, because all of that is just breeding, basic hygiene, just basic cleaning, keeping your house clean, basic wiping things down, basic personal hygiene. But there are areas that we're talking about that sometimes people just don't think, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. So wipe down your phone, your keys, your purse, your belt, those kind of things. Grocery bags, diaper bags, purses. Again, don't put them on the floors and then come home and put them on your table and your countertops unless you're going to wipe them down. And I can't tell you how many times people come into my house and they do that very thing because they're used to doing that, where me and my family know you don't put a bag that has been on the floor of the car on top of the table or the countertop. It's just not, we just don't do that because I mean, feet, dogs, animals, if you live on a farm, you know there's stuff that's you're tracking in. So, and again, hopefully I'm not being offensive to anyone. Large gatherings and your own egg. We all know there are sometimes dishes that we really don't want to eat because we are not sure about the cleanliness or hygiene of the source. And that's not to be rude, but if you know somebody blows their nose, doesn't wash their hands, change the baby diaper. I actually had a friend way before Torah who changed her child's poopy diaper and then went and got in my freezer and made herself a glass of ice water. Flabbergasted. I don't get it. If you are hosting events and you or you're hosting Shabbat services or group events, you have to be responsible as a host for making sure that the people that are coming are making safe steps. And you might have to step on a few toes. One of the things, ask sick people to stay home. Everybody likes to go sometimes and they like to ignore it. Oh, it's just a little this or a little that. This is a kind of a thing where you have to be diligent and say, we miss you, and do check on them, but don't leave them just out there.
So let me just share. So we were out of town last weekend, and we went to an Erev Shabbat meeting, family home group. And one of the gentlemen, his wife is Chinese. And he was telling us that his wife worked for Apple and that she did a requisition for 1 million masks, which we're going to talk about masks. This really isn't the point here. A mask for Apple employees in China. So, for those who are still thinking this is crazy, that is the main point. But what he did, because, there's a breaking of bread and the passing of, the blessing and all that, he brought in a tub of Clorox wipes. And he said, look, everybody, this is serious. You need to do this. Now, I personally would have brought spray of essential oils, but that's what he brought. And, you know, and I was glad that that group was conscientious of this. And they made sure that they wiped after everything, and everybody wiped their hands before they went up there to the prayer and the blessing and to pass the bread and stuff. So those are things to, you know, to keep in mind. And, you know, it really wasn't offensive. I mean, some people might have thought, oh, whatever, it's foolish. But oh well, you know what I mean? They didn't stand up and make a scene out of it, because everybody's like, yeah, sure, okay. I mean, but, you know, I was thinking as I was standing there there might come a day that I don't even want to do this, you know?
Right.
So.
And the thing is that if we just say, like, sometimes I'll just say, okay, like children especially, sometimes people don't think children need to wash. And if you just say kindly, okay, it's time for the meal, everybody needs to wash. And you just kind of make that a routine, like when you're hosting at your house, or as event planners, that just needs to be an announcement or something. You know, they're those people that they play with their toes, they pet the dog. Like I said, even sometimes something so gross as changing a poopy diaper, and they just don't think. And some people may have a really strong immune system, and yeah, bless them, and they've really built up from not doing those things, but the rest of us may not. And we have to consider other people and say, great, I'm glad you don't have to use soap, and you don't have to wash, but the rest of the world is not necessarily that way. Make sure that people are washing their hands before they're preparing or serving the food. It would be good to ask people to wash before the food distribution. Just, make an announcement. Everybody should wash. And we know that historically, Judah has been protected from plague and disease, partly because of their laws and rules of hand washing. Now, we don't need to add laws and say they are of Torah, but clearly there is some value in some of that when things like this are happening. Don't double dip. Take a bite and put it back in.
Double dipping, right.
No group eating dishes.
Get your own little plate. Put whatever you want to dip into in your own little plate. Yeah.
Yeah. There's, you see it. People don't think about it. Just take a taste and move on. No group eating dishes such as fondue or like food fountains and things like that. During an outbreak like this, we want to avoid those kind of things. Don't allow children to serve themselves. This serves 2 points. One, children have big eyes. People do too. Adults do too. They often take things that they take big servings, and they're often picky eaters. And it's been more than one occasion I've been to a community event where, some people are allowing the children to pile their plates, and then half of it or 3/4 of it goes in the trash. And then there's people that went without because there wasn't enough at the end of the line. But this also serves as a hygienic thing. If you don't let the children, or you let somebody else do the serving, it helps even distribute the food. The servers have washed their hands, and you could keep disease at a minimum by having specific people hand out the food. Make sure you keep the food at the proper temperatures. Viruses and bacteria grow or die at higher temperatures, and they're allowed to breed when food is not properly stored. So now I'm back to loving your neighbor. Bathe before you go out. If you're going to go out and meet in the group, maybe you want to make sure you've taken a bath and shower and have clean clothes on. The old Sunday best or the Sabbath best.
Right.
Have your clean fingernails. Wash when you use the bathroom. I mean, this is like for the love of God for me. This is like wash when you use the bathroom. That should be a no-brainer. I see it. People finely dressed, go in the ladies' room, and you see ladies, they're finely dressed, their hair's all done, their makeup's all done, they got nice jewelry, nice clothes on, they come out of the bathroom, fluff their hair, and walk out the door. And you think, oh my goodness, you missed the point of life somehow. Wash after you blow your nose, pet the dog, pick your toes, change a diaper, handle dirty laundry, any contact with bodily functions or germ-ridden areas. And we don't always think about that. This is a zoonotic disease, which means it can pass between animals and humans. So, there could be animals that have it or are carrying it, and you go and you're petting the dog, and then go touch the baby's face and give him a kiss. Those are things that you want to think about in a situation like this. So I have a little prep list, a couple of different prep lists. We have a storm prep list, and the storm prep list is going to flow into because a storm is, you're going to be hunkered down at home. When a storm comes in, we know there's a chance we're not getting to the grocery store. So thinking about quarantine, these are things that you can think about doing if you had a storm coming, but also it flows into the quarantine and I'm going to be at home. You would just expand it, because usually a storm is only a few days. Maybe in Montana or places like that, it might be a lot longer. What's the longest you've ever been
or a hurricane?
housebound? Hurricane.
Probably hurricanes, but you could, if you were in a snowstorm that actually blocked you in with so much snow, maybe as a child, I remember one time we got so much snow that we had to call the neighbors to come dig us out the front door. So I'd probably say a week, but it depends if it's a flood or a hurricane or whatever. But I think everybody needs to probably be prepared for a minimum of 2 weeks.
Minimum, yes. And because some of the reports are saying 27 days, if the authorities decided, or if there was another outbreak, like on some of these ships and things like that, it could be longer. 14 days is a minimum for preparing to be at home.
And I think it should be longer, but you don't know how it's going to play out.
Right. And and what are the consequences? Even if things clear, you don't know what the situation is to get back to the store. Things may be shutting down. You may be losing basic shipments and groceries, and so you need to have it for longer than just your quarantine till things get rolling again. Okay, so cash is king, other than Yeshua, who's really the king. But if power were to go out, people aren't going to work, the power goes down, you can't use your ATM. And the blackout, it was 2013, I think, where half of the Eastern Seaboard lost power for 3 days. They weren't taking credit cards and debit cards. People were driving from the cities up out into the country looking for gas stations because they couldn't find places that would take their plastic. You should always have cash. Always have cash. And barter and or barterable items, small denominations of gold and silver, junk jewelry. Got a broken gold necklace? Throw it in a Ziploc bag, carry it in your purse. You might be able to get something for it, or gas or supplies if you needed to. Make sure you have water, filter, and containers. So especially if you live in an apartment or something, a filter's good, but do you have a place to store water if you need to store it ahead of time in case the water were to be shut off? Gas in your vehicle.
We talk, I'm sorry, we do talk a lot about it in the radio series that we did. I think we had a whole section on it, but when you are having to prioritize, water, shelter is number one, but you have to have water. So either you're going to have enough water stored or a way to filter water and or both. So water is going to be number one. So, I'm just thinking if I had to pick between water and food, I'd be picking water.
Yes.
And then I'd picking, rice or beans or whatever, because you're going to have right water for that either. Anyway, make water a high priority for you and your family. And I would suggest you do it in a means that for what you would need where you're at, and or if you need to leave, that you would have the ability to take some water. So
that's where a good filter would come in, and a container, so that if you run across water and you have to refill, you have the ability to do that. Gas in your vehicles and your gas cans. Again, if you have a generator, it's only good as long as you have the fuel to put in it. And these things, some of those things, like you said, in a quarantine, it's what is the most precious thing if you can't do everything. Shelter is number one. In the elements, right now it's winter. We have a snowstorm today. In the elements, people can die of exposure within a few minutes. Water, air, 3 minutes without air, 3 minutes, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. So you can go a long time without food. And then usually it's just a nutritional breakdown. You can find things to, maybe to supplement some foraging or something, but you have to pick the most important things that you can deal with and that work for you. Food, dried, canned goods, peanut butter, tuna, pasta, rice, beans, fruits and veggies, flour. You're going to want to stock up. People are now starting to know. The CDC announced yesterday that we need to be ready. They're announcing it again today. They were talking about Americans need to be ready. FEMA talked about it a year or so ago. They said Americans should be ready for 6 months on their own. Most people
Well, you
really
know, it was
would.
even, I think, last 2 months, if you paid attention very subtly, there was an order or something issued by the president that's saying, you know, you need to prepare, and everybody's ignored it.
Right. They're telling us they can't handle it. I mean, basically, they're saying we can't. They're not going to say we're the government. We're here to help you unless they have the syringe in their hand. Basically, powdered foods and drinks. You know, a lot of the supplement industry has really helped in that way, because you can go buy protein powder, vegan protein powder. You can go buy all of those things. They're long-term storage, and they're readily available. You don't have to tap into the survival food, so to speak. You can just
Right,
go
and
to.
a lot of it's very nutritional.
Yes, and a lot of it's non-GMO. It's vegan. It's vegetarian. That's an easy, quick way to find something that, if you got the fluid to put in it, you never want to take the dehydrated foods and fruits and veggies and not take the proper fluids. Make sure it's high nutrition and quality. Don't get sick on toxic food. You know, don't go buy the ramen noodles. I mean, okay, if it was starving in ramen noodles, pick ramen noodles, but don't go buy the junk food that's going to just defeat your immune system and make it harder for you to fight this.
Well, I'm assuming this is on your, probably maybe on your list, but here's, when we're talking about this, let's talk about, you want to make sure that besides the water, and if you are, I mean, I'm thinking of some people who have these preparedness, you know, meal kits and stuff, that it's not, you know, it's not fresh veggies and stuff that's
Right.
going to be, you know, bulk, etc., unless it's got some oatmeal. But even then, if you don't have enough water, it doesn't really matter. But you have to keep in mind, whether you like to be healthy or not, when you're in this situation particularly and you're locked up and you've eaten to fill your belly, and most of us don't have self-control and haven't been doing fasting, etc., and training themselves, if you don't have enough water or you don't have what it takes to move your poop out, okay,
Right.
you're going to be sick even with your food. So you might want to make sure you have stocked up on magnesium. I particularly like the Natural Calm product, but stock up on your magnesium, because you can make things move. Not to mention that you know it's very calming and helps you in so many ways with your muscles, etc. But that might be the quickest way, especially when you're dealing with children or
Right.
you know, people who just don't really want to worry about stuff like that. A lot of men don't like it, and vitamin C. Because you can take the magnesium and you can take the vitamin C at a threshold that's going to either give you diarrhea or is going to make it easy for you to get stuff out. Because you got to think about it. You got plumbing in your body and it has got to go out. So it doesn't matter if you have food. If it's not moving out, you are going to get sick and the toxins are going to build up and you're going to be miserable. So
Getting rid of stuff is really important, I think. Yeah. Really made that
you
a
got to flush
point,
the
didn't he?
toilet, the internal toilet.
Yes. So sanitary items. Some of us don't worry about those things anymore, but some people will need
Crazy
that.
out?
You
No,
have
just
to.
kidding.
You have to consider those
2018.
things.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Can you substitute that? Bathing items, soap, shampoo, conditioner. Just some people only have just that bottle hanging in the shower, that bar of soap. If you're naturally inclined to prepping or to having things in hand, or you've had a large family, you might have extras. But if you're that person who only has just that, what you need, if you're quarantined, those are the things you're going to need to make sure you get a little extra. Meds. If you are dependent on a prescription med, you need to try to go talk to your doctor and see if you can get a 90-day supply. They know what's going on. Some things people are dependent on: insulin, maybe blood pressure medications. There are natural things. There are natural things that people can try. And I would say if I had one of those conditions, I would be looking at getting my meds, and I would be looking at what is the natural alternative, like red yeast rice, which I think they took off the market or something. They wanted to control it because I think it's a natural cholesterol fighter. But there are things that you can do that we know naturally can help, or herbs or supplements that help those conditions. And that would be your expertise.
Well, and if we're giving months, and if we're giving more time, a lot of people who have already been working on this, study Dr. Pompa, study Dr. Fung, F-U-N-G. There's a lot of people that are into fasting and reversing the diabetes, even when they're on medications. Actually, fasting can help heal and prepare the body for what we're talking about. So if you have time, and you want to look at those things to help improve your health, because what you're going to do is you're going to get autophagy or die off of the bad cells. If you do it long enough, you're going to get new stem cells. And that's, and what's really interesting to me with this fad, with the keto diet and the fasting and everything, and how people are reversing, getting off drugs, medications, etc., is the basic tenets of it is you're preparing your body not to provide the terrain for these viruses and bacteria and parasites. But it also, if you go back and study the Essenes, which were a sect of Jews during the time of Yeshua, John the Baptist, etc., which is where they kind of hung up at the Qumran caves in Israel, they wrote, they have writings that said this is how you heal. So if you have time, you might want to look at those things now so that you can get off of some things. We are not doctors. We're not prescribing, treating, but there are doctors out there like Dr. Fung who is doing this. He's a kidney doctor. What's a proper word? Nephrologist. And so that's what they do, is they're helping people reverse their diabetes and other diseases through fasting. So, if we're good for the next 3-4 months, whatever, but we never know what will come down the line. A lot of people are wanting to get not dependent on the system. So those are things to really consider. So anyway.
And have a hard copy. Don't count on running to the internet and the YouTube video or even your email and saying, oh, I'll just read it. And, oh, I needed that, have a hard copy.
Hard copy. Us old timers know hard copy, CYA. Cover your hiney.
Right. And they've wanted to digitalize everything. Buy it, but it's digital, right? I mean, no. Hard copy, hard copy. Anything, any information.
Yeah. I've said this before if you've listened to any of my teachings, and I will say it again, and it keeps coming out so much more. Understand, the reason they wanted to digitize your world was so that they could artificially be omnipotent and omnipresent. Don't forget that. So when you love all the things about technology, understand you're putting a noose around your neck, and if you don't do anything to learn how to adapt or survive without it, you're going to stay in the net. So
many things. Oh, I'll have it on the cloud. You're not going to have it when you really need it.
Yeah. The cloud's going to dissipate.
Candles, oil lamps, and kerosene. Again, electricity. If people aren't going to work, the power may get shut down. You need to be able to make sure that you can provide light for yourself and heat. If things are looking rough, get your bills paid. Make sure your errands are run. Do those mundane tasks that you may not think of, but you don't want to stress over that. You want to reduce stress. It's a big immune deflator. So take care of things, check them off the list. And because disruptions, how is the supply chain? How is the mail going? There may come a time when they decide, hey, we got to shut the mail for 3 days. Well, you missed mail in the mortgage payment or something, and now there's a problem. We do have longer times to deal with stuff, and hopefully there'll be grace. But some stories are coming out of China where they don't have that, which we talked about. People are not necessarily going to be given the grace in some situations. And depending on how they may want to use this, who knows how things will be. So flashlights and batteries, first aid kit, and I'm going to talk about the quarantining in place. Basics: Band-Aids, gauze, tape, stop bleed, dressing, Neosporin. Again, Neosporin is a chemical or over-the-counter antibiotic. There are natural essential oils and things instead. Some of these supplies are easier if you get vet supplies. I'm not giving medical advice, but I'm saying you can walk into TSC. Some of these supplies are more affordable in vet form.
Okay, good.
You can walk into TSC, you can buy fish fox. Now, I don't know that I would take it. I avoid antibiotics in general. And I'm never saying somebody else should take fish fox, but some people recommend having fish antibiotics in your stockpile.
Well, let me point out something that from a natural point of view, and I am not a doctor, but I'm telling you what I have learned in 40 years of this and the trainings that I have been to with herbology and essential oils and just my experience also, is that generally speaking, and I think you can find this out there, that antibiotics do nothing for virus.
Right. Nothing for a virus.
They work for for bacteria. So for instance, if you were to get meningitis, there's a viral meningitis and there's a bacterial meningitis. And I have experienced viral meningitis. And really all they could do was make sure I wasn't dehydrated, right? There's nothing, they had to treat me. Now, and in those days, they didn't treat you just to treat you so you felt like you were getting treated. You know what I mean? Like today they'll give you something. I don't really care what the heck it does. And people are begging, give me something, give me something. Right. Not because even if the doctors explain, most of them, the people are going to still want something. So for instance, one of the things that has gone up like over $100 a pound since I started is golden seal. And a lot of times you'll see golden seal in a tincture with, say, echinacea. I think you should have both separately, but a lot of times they'll be together. And the thing about golden seal is, and the reason it's put there is because it's a powerful antiviral properties in it. And so when you mix it with echinacea, you got antibacterial with antiviral. But keep this in mind. If you are pregnant, you do not want to use golden seal because it can cause you to have contractions. And I don't tell you that just because I know that from the information of what I've studied. I know it because I had a preemie, but I had to make a decision between, do I let my eye infection, my viral eye infection blind me, or do I take the risk and take the golden seal anyway, which I did. And it was a few weeks before I was due. And so I know that it starts contractions. So I'm just letting you know, if you're looking at golden seal, and one of the really good products, and we'll talk about this again later, but just some here, is there's a company called Mother's Herbs, or we used to call them Tri-Light, TRI-Light Herbs. They have a product called Scout Out. And that I would highly recommend and have used it over the years because it's sweet based, because it's with glycerin. And my children learned that we're going to go for the echinacea with the really bitter, strong taste, because the more bitter it is, the better it is, because they know it works. But when you're starting with children who have never learned this, they're going to want the sweet stuff. And the sweet stuff is in the glycerin. So, and that's actually one of our newsletters. So just wanted to explain that about the Scout Out and understand antibiotics are not the answer to virus. But we do have antiviral herbs, we have antiviral essential oils. And again, if you're going to go to a doctor, that all gets overridden. But this is for people who want to take care of themselves as much as possible, who have no choice, like the people in that Orient country who only a few, I don't know, thousands got to go to the hospitals, and then they were locked in a room, and if they weren't infected, they were infected by the time they were gone, or they were locked up in a football stadium or whatever it is that is equivalent for them, versus those who are barricaded in their homes. If you're barricaded in your home, what do you have on hand to help your family get through this? And that's really kind of where we're going at. Because for me personally, even when I went through the hurricane storms and stuff, the last place on earth I wanted to be was with those groups of people. And if you were the ones that were caught in that stadium after Katrina, it was horrific. Not a good thing. And when they say it was dark, it was dark because it was on Rosh Hashanah where the moon was not existing. So when it was dark, there was no electricity. There was no light in the heavens besides stars. And I doubt that because it would have been cloudy because of the hurricane. So anyway.
And there's some horrific stories
There's my
about
blast.
things that happen to people in those places. That's the last place I want to have to go. Yes, and when I say, mention an antibiotic or something, yeah, I'm not recommending it. Some people are not as comfortable or familiar with essential oils and herbs. And again,
Right.
like you said, an antibiotic
no, I
is
just wanted
not
to
an
point that out.
antiviral.
Yeah.
It's not an antiviral. People
Right.
want to take an antibiotic for an antiviral, and that's for a virus, and that's why we have some of the problems we have. But if they had something that they thought, if you got a serious wound, a cut, and you weren't skilled enough to do it naturally, you might want that. It's not the first choice, but by far.
And I personally believe we're dealing with. I don't believe the stuff that this just is that or they have been putting so much bacteria in the air. I almost died 2 years ago, and when I did the research, I believe it was directly resulting from the bacteria that was released over Montana by the University of Montana during the solar eclipse or around this time of the solar eclipse, because they know that 5, A, B, C, D, F, G, and the heavy metals that come down in the chemtrails, the heavy metals that we ingest and stuff in the pesticides, they know that all those things enhance parasites in the vectors, basically, the different things that can happen. So you need to, you just need to basically understand that I don't think we are just dealing with one thing or another. And the other thing I've learned through the years is the herbs and oils that used to really work and the different kinds of coughs that we were getting kept changing as the more they chemtrailed us. And so I have found, especially the one where I almost died a couple of years ago, is what we were using before didn't always work, and we learned that we had to mix it up and change it because these things are mutating. So you might need an antibiotic, and I would prefer a natural one such as oregano, but or echinacea, etc. But it's not to say, pray, seek the Father. We cannot put him in a box. We cannot put all of this in one box for one way for everybody. Father's
Right.
going to provide for you, and he's going to work in spite of any of these situations if we pursue him, and that's his will for us. So I'm just telling you what I know from my experience and what I would shoot for, but that does not mean he is not capable to work in any other situation. So
Absolutely. Amen. Baby needs. If you have a baby, and I feel bad for formula feeding moms because that's an extra burden that you have to consider. You can make your own baby formula. My oldest daughter did that. She used Meyerberg goat's milk and black molasses, and it was a really balanced, really nice formula. But you're going to need to stock up on that if you think you're going to be home quarantining. And diapers, get cloth diapers. You may run out of the fabric ones or the disposables. A fire starter, alternative heat and cooking source, like a biomass stove. Like, again, if the gas, if things get shut off, you have to be able to take care of yourself, cook, make hot water to disinfect, to clean, to wash, weather appropriate clothing. If something should come up, you do need to make sure that you don't invite more injury or illness and expose yourself. Michigan, I'm seeing people, I saw a girl in a midriff shirt the other day, and it was like 30 some degrees outside. And I was like, what are people thinking? Alternative to washing your laundry. We talked about how important to keep things clean. So you're going to want to make sure that if you're going to be sheltered in place at home, if the power's out, a lot of these are if the power goes out, which is not a consequence of this illness, but could be a consequence of the shutdowns or the quarantines or the lack of people going to work, or if people get sick and they have to find replacement employees to go do that job to make that system run. And what if
you have a storm? What if you have a storm and there's not enough people
Right.
to go out and pick up the power lines and clear them?
And we don't know how far this is going to go. We don't know how far the Father's going to take this. And that's the other thing. How far are we going? Baby wipes and a weather radio or some kind of communication device. So here's we finally moved on to additional supplies for quarantine and sheltering in place. some of this information I listen to a lot of YouTubers out there that are like-minded. So I'm going to give them an honorable mention. Prep Stutters. She's a lovely lady. Patriot Nurse, Prepper Nurse, and others. I've done this for a long time, but I also there's always an update and new things you can learn from everyone. Are you considering the needs of those who may need to come to your house and shelter with you? Elderly parents, single people, etc. My mom lives 20 minutes away from me, and they're older. I asked her when this started to happen, I said, are you ready to, how long do you think? I asked her to assess her own situation. How long can you and my stepdad stay in the house on your own in a quarantine? And she said she's probably good for a few weeks. But what if we thought it was going to go longer? I said, are you, come here. Are you okay with that? You have to consider that. If you are a person is going to be providing for somebody else, you need to consider that and what you're doing. We're always supposed to be thinking about others anyway and serving others. And there's people you're not going to want to let in. And that's something the father's going to have to direct people on. Supplements, essential oils, and nutrition-rich foods. And this is a whole, this is a lifetime of learning. My go-to is always essential oils and supplements for healing and for treating things and preventing things. Like the foods that you buy, maybe all you can afford is the off-the-box ramen noodles or whatever. But if you can get the good stuff, the nutritious things, the health food powders, the dried foods, try to have that. There are encapsulated vegetarian forms of, say, reds, which is red fruits and vegetables, or greens, green fruits and vegetables. If you have water, yes, it's not going to fill your belly, but you're going to have a nutritional support there. You are going to, a bottle of that could go a long way. Barter items, the neighborhood or whatever, you're quarantined, depending on how they quarantine things down, or you really need to get something. Again, the systems may not be in place, but you want to have something that you can say, okay, I really need to get, some flour, or I really need, and I think my neighbors down the road have dairy cows and I'd like to get some milk or something. If you've got something to trade, that's always important in these kind of situations. There are stories, Hong Kong, since this thing broke out, they had, armed robbers rob toilet paper. And in Bosnia, they said some of the hottest items were candles and batteries, and I can't remember the other things, but there's things that you don't think, like candles in America have kind of become decorator items. But if you've lost power or electricity, so much, yeah, it's not a pretty foo-foo thing. It can be a real big issue to not have light at all. Germicidal bleach. Bleach is good. Germicidal bleach, better for sanitizing. Again, if you don't like using the chemicals, the natural stuff is always preferable if you can get it, and if especially for treating disease and giving to people, if you know how to handle it. Hand sanitizer, the FDA recently went after Perel for overstating its claims. So that's kind of a questionable. Most people think hand sanitizer. It's very recommended, especially in this. I do have it. It does work good for removing stains, and it's a great fire starter. So it is probably better than people not washing at all. So
yeah. Now, see, and I personally don't use it all because I don't think it does the job. And the research that I did, it just basically stuns the bacteria or whatever, and it's got chemicals in it. That's why I would use an essential oil. But if I'm in a marketplace or somewhere, and that's all I have to wipe my hands off, then I want a paper towel, and I want that. So, we have varying grades of effectiveness, and for most people, that's the most thing that they have available. So.
And if you go to some of the the parks and stuff, sorry.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like the parks and the porta potty type places, right? Okay. They sometimes don't have soap and water. They just have
that's true.
The hand sanitizer dispensers. You can't be so afraid of it that you fail to use something that's at your disposal. That's the thing. Go for the natural, but if that's all you've got, use what you get. Rubber gloves. I think this is a thing along with masks. We know the masks are getting in short supply. They were disappearing pretty quick. We went into Home Depot. We're doing some renovation work. We need N95s for sanding. They have a sign on the shelf that says, and we live in a small farming community. We have a sign on the shelf that says limit of 10 boxes. And I thought, gee, I don't even think they had 10 boxes of anything together. They might have had 10 boxes, but I didn't see 10 boxes of any one thing in the first place. He said, the gentleman in the paint department said some people were going out with cartloads. So, and this was early on. This was probably several weeks ago, before CDC announcements and things.
A lot of people were waking up a few weeks ago, and I'm wearing a personal ionizer, which a lot of people wear just for mold or bacteria who are sensitive. But we put this in a newsletter, and we have a discount for this if you want to get this. And if you study and listen to enough, you'll find that some of these viruses and things have to have a certain positive or negative ion. And it affects and helps protect you. Now, I don't know, Suzette, I want you to explain, because most of what I've listened to with some of the different doctors and stuff is they're saying the mask really does not prevent anything from coming into you, but it can help from you spreading some of it. And that it is because it's aerosol in this particular disease we're talking about, is that it's through tiny air droplets, so that's why it can be spread across the room. And so if you're going out, you might want to consider your sunglasses, your eyeglasses, keeping them clean, etc. And you not saying you shouldn't do a mask, but if you were going to prep, to me personally, a mask is one of the last things, and right now, as far as I can see, they're either very expensive or very difficult to get, if at all. And I'm going to venture that within the next week, you're not even going to get them.
A lot of these things are made in China.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. And, and just with this one case where 1 million masks were sent to China from a U.S. warehouse, I mean, who else is doing that? You don't think that other corporations and people aren't planning or doing anything? They're responding, so, yeah. Go ahead. I just wanted you to address that about what you think about the effectiveness of the mask.
No, thank you for mentioning that. If you think about this is a level 4 biohazard, right? When you see the pictures, they're in a full suit. If you look at the level 4 lab that was in the place where it broke out, they have positive air. They have, they're taped. Their arms are taped. They're in these suits. The air is coming in from an outside. They got an apparatus to give them air when they work under the hoods. The air is sucked out. We're talking, we're not wearing that. An N95 mask is made for sanding. It's a particulate filter. It is not going to, quote, stop a virus. But what I heard from some of the people I listened to that have come out of China or lived in the Orient is that it's a common courtesy over there in Asia when there is such a thing like this, like it's loving your neighbor, to wear it. You're protecting your droplets from spreading to other people. And if someone were to get close to you, a lot of people, sometimes you spit even accidentally when you talk or something, or you were to sneeze, it's going to stop it from just shooting out. But the eyes, they know that this is infectable in the eyes. So you have to have glasses or goggles or something. The mask is basically protecting other people and from actual, hey, somebody spit and it came and landed on my lip. But it's only a one-time use. You have to take it off properly. Obviously, again, we're thinking about that surface thing. If you take it off like this, and then you've touched all the area that just got wet, and it's only good, it gets saturated after so many hours, it gets wet, and then you're going to have to change it.
I was told last week it was 6 to 8 hours, depending on who it was in the medical field.
I hadn't started an hour thing, just they said when it gets wet enough that it's difficult to breathe through, then you're going to want to change it.
That was just what a nurse told me. So, it's about trying not to spread it. Do what you can, but for me, it's not an availability issue for me, and I'm not going to spend that kind of money on that to prepare when I could put the money in something else I think would be much more effective for preparation or helping someone get through it. But that would have been something we would have wanted to do 3 months ago.
Yeah,
when they were more
personally,
affordable and available. Yeah.
sorry. Yes, and personally, I mean, I'd grab a nice piece of silk that's tightly woven, and I'd throw some Spice Thieves on it and wrap that around my face. In fact,
linen,
I've done that in
right?
hospitals.
Cotton?
I take the mask and
Yes.
I'm throwing the Spice Thieves on the mask when I'm visiting
Yes.
somebody. It's
Oh,
cold flu
absolutely.
season, or
That's
I
a
think I
great idea
maybe
to
have a
spray
little
it.
something.
Whereas I
I
spray
put the
myself
Spice Thieves
before I
on
leave
the mask,
anytime.
and then
So, yes.
I'm sorry. And then I'm breathing
I spray the
through.
Spice Thieves all around me in my clothing, but then if you put it on your mask, right?
Yes, the spray is wonderful, and you're going to address that on how to get those products. And I think yes, when I'm going out now, those are the things I'm doing personally. I'm using the inhaler. Thank you. I'm using the spray. I'm using, like I said, if I thought I had to have a mask on, I would put some of that. I would put the oils on the mask, and I would be breathing it. Okay, so eye protection, we talked about that. You can use goggles, glasses, dollar store fashion glasses, anything that protects your eyes at least a little bit from the droplets of coming in from somebody else. But again, this is a virus. It can go, they're in full on biohazard suits when they deal with this stuff. You're just trying to protect yourself from a direct assault. Rubber, plastic boots. If you had to go, say that the quarantine said, like they've done in some of the cities, one person gets to leave from the house every 3 days to go get groceries or something, and you really had a bad outbreak, you'd want to have this suit on. You could get a Tyvek suit. You want eye protection, you want goggles, and you would want rubber boots or something that are as seamless as possible and easy to wash. So you would suit up in as good of a makeup biohazard suit as you could possibly to go into town or whatever and get what you need. Heavy plastic sheeting, 6 mil is usually the recommendation. This can be used for a lot of things. You may have to deal with like a broken window or something like that. Or if you have to create a quarantine zone in your home, then you need good tape. You can use the heavy plastic sheeting, and you can use duct tape, electrical tape, and the aluminum tape is really good because it conforms. You can really mold it. That stuff that they use to wrap around ducks, true duct tape. Rubbing alcohol, we talked about that. I think the rubber gloves and the rubbing alcohol are going to be the next things that we're going to find in short supply.
Well, and I would add to that, I don't know if yours on your list, I would add white distilled vinegar, which we use all the time to wash and clean with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. And apple cider vinegar, which is good, just good for health too. Peroxide and the masks, we talked about that. They, only good for so long. A Tyvek suit, which is the painter suit that you use. And this would be like basically a one-time use. You're going to go to town, like I said, or you're going to go to a place where it's heavily infected. You want to suit up, tape your gloves, tape your arms off and your seams off, have elastic, have a suit that has elastic, cover your face, and go do what you have to do. Or the other reason to have those basics, I saw the Tyvek suits and I thought, I passed them up. They were at the Restore and they were like $3. And I was
what are you talking about? I didn't hear that.
The Tyvek, like the painter suits that they wear, they're like
okay.
a tarp material. But in some places, like in China, it wasn't so much, it's not maybe so much that you feel like you want to wear it, but they may require people to wear things like with the masks. So you may want to have some basics so that if they say, okay, you can come out, but you must be covered. You must have A, B, C, D to cover yourself. That might be the reason. I don't see myself suiting up and putting on rubber boots and gloves. And it would have to be really bad. I would be more reliant on my faith and on my use of essential oils and things like that. But if they said this is required, you'd want to make sure you have that. You might want to have some kind of buckets or something for putting your infected things in, because you don't wear that and then come in your house and, just drape it across the couch or something, or hang it in the coat rack. Garbage bags and straws.
Make sure you have a good supply of garbage bags. Yes.
Yes, garbage bags and straws. When people are sick, there's this big push now to get rid of straws or to go to paper straws. But in the hospitals, what does everybody drink out of? When you're sick, unless you've had dental work or something and you don't want to get a dry socket, you need a straw. And straws come in glass, they come in silicone, they come in stainless. the disposable kind. And that's the next thing is durable disposables. We're so used to buying things, sanitary pads, diapers, hankies, napkins, Ziploc bags, eating utensils, foil, that just you use them once and you throw them away. In a quarantine situation and the supply chain interruption, which has already hit, those things may not be available. You need to make sure that in your home, you have things. If you're a person who lives on paper plates and plastic silverware, go get yourself at least one set of real stuff you can wash and reuse. There are cloth diapers. There are.
One of the reasons, let me just back up for a second. One of the reasons I considered paper plates and plastic utensils was not so much because they were throwawayable, was, yes, I could be thrown away, but I also thought I could use them depending on what food I put on them, because if we get in a situation where the garbage is backed up, and or say I don't have water and I can't keep washing the plates or the pans, well then at least I have a paper plate and good, paper towels or something. So you have to think. I've had to live off grid, so I've learned to how can I make a cup of water, wash a whole sink of dishes, It's the same thing about that. You just have to really think about how you're going to do that. So having some, like you said, those plastic, paper, durables, and making sure you have the plastic bags for all kinds of reasons, even to put on you, right? If you had to walk around or go in and out, so yeah, that's really important. So go ahead.
Yeah, and having the, like you said, if you can't do dishes, having the disposables, if you can do that and you can afford it and put it in your preps, but make sure you have a backup of durables, sanitary napkins for people that, if that stuff, I don't know where those are made. If they're all made in China, well, we may see a supply, a lack of supply in those things. Diapers, that's not really things you can do easily without. Even Ziploc bags, they now make silicone Ziploc bags that you can get in the grocery store. And I've tried to, when I go get my groceries, I just add a package. I've been adding a package of them every so often when I go get groceries to get off the dependence of using the throwaway Ziploc bags. But they're really handy more for packing and trips. They're much more durable. But you may want to be able to store things. And again, the supply chain is interrupted. Even if Ziploc bags are made in America, if the plastic is made in China and the plastic can't get shipped here, they still can't be put together until they, bring those systems back online. And crib pads or piddle pads or waterproof mattress covers. They sell them in the pet aisle. They're not sanitary, but they're used all the time in a hospital when somebody has a problem with their bowels or they're going to give birth or something. These are the pads that they pull out. They're kind of a plastic with a diaper type coating on them. If you've got somebody sick and having to be in bed, and another thing to think of is a bedpan and the commode. I don't know what they call the hospital portable commode. It's metal bars with a plastic toilet and a bucket under it. You're going to really want that if you're dealing with somebody very, very ill. And if the bathrooms or the plumbing shuts down, or say you're in a city where sometimes things don't work or whatever, the power, those are really handy. Sometimes you can find those for $5 at the thrift store, or people throw those kind of things, medical equipment like that, walkers and things. Often you see them at the curb. So those are things you can consider picking up in case, again, other people or somebody in your house gets sick. Those are the kind of, heavy duty medical supplies that if you've got somebody really ill, you may need them. And you can save your work and some of the disgust of using the little portable commodes or a camping toilet if you put a plastic bag inside of it. You can, you add sawdust or leaves or whatever, put it inside, tie up the bag, and you have to have a place to dispose of that. But that way you're not worrying about, a camping toilet can be kind of complicated to clean, and obviously dumping those commodes are not pleasant either. But if every person, if they're well and you have to go to that, and you can take your own out and find a place to dispose of it properly, that's a good idea to use that. I don't think they're horribly expensive to buy a new one. In this kind of a situation where we already have the outbreak, I would be leery of picking up a used one somewhere. But
Yeah.
You know, if that's what you can afford, I see them a lot in thrift stores or places like that. I mean, literally like $5. Just look for the cleanest one and pick it up with gloves and go
Well,
home
and then
and
like for people like
clean it.
who do dry camping, they get the big bucket, like a food bucket, from the deli, or they sell a paint bucket, like you say, you put the plastic bag in there and you can put sand or kitty litter or whatever you put in it to help absorb it if you're going to be in a situation like that. And then you have the way to take it out of the plastic bag. The other thing is, a lot of people don't line their garbage bags, say in their bathroom, the rest of their house. They might do it in the kitchen, but they're not doing it in the rest of the house. That's going to be real important, and actually it is more sanitary, so that when you pull it out, it's not whatever was in there is all in the garbage can, plastic or metal garbage can. And then, of course, we try to bleach ours frequently after that. But think about that. And that was one of the ways we recycled our shopping bags. But now where we're living here in Oregon, in some cities, you can't even get a plastic bag. And everywhere you go, you either bring your own bags, which again, we're recycling stuff that everybody's touched on the shelf, going in the bag, coming home. And it might be plastic, it might be reusable, whatever, but and they charge you a tax now. I mean, because it's not like the grocery store could even decide to give you a bag as part of their business or whatever. It's a tax. So you need to consider those bags. I mean, like if you live in Florida, we used to just worry about the cockroaches in the bags. Now, what are we going to worry about? What's on the shelf, what people are touching, what's going to the bag? Is the bag reusable? What went? I mean, yeah, there's just one of the things I like to do with things like that, like I would do this with my comforters and pillows. I take Purify, which is an essential oil blend that we carry, or Spice Thieves, and I put it either on the article or on a wool ball or a dryer sheet, and I put those antibacterial, antiviral oils in that dryer with that thing and make it, spend 5-10 minutes. And you could do the same thing with maybe your reusable bags and different things like that can go in there for just a few minutes and make sure they don't melt it. But it's going to put the heat on it, and it's going to disperse those essential oils, antibacterial, etc. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I use the oils when I do laundry. Sometimes if there's things I really think need to be disinfected, like I've bought things at the thrift store or something like that, I'm
pretty
doing
much doing it
with,
all the time now,
Yes.
So, yeah.
The isolation area, you want it to be away from high traffic and food, and it should preferably have a bathroom nearby, and it would be nice to have a window, have a bed, and you're going to tape it, you're going to seal it, top and bottom, tape it to the floor, tape it. Now, if you got carpet, you're going to have to figure that one out, but still tape it down. I personally don't know how I would handle that. I mean, if my family member, loved one, God forbid, has the virus, I'm not really thinking too much about, I want to isolate you in this little plastic room, but that may be important. It may, even just they get better and it doesn't spread to the family. Who knows? But if you have the stuff, you can handle it if you need to. Make sure you have activities. If you're going to be sorry.
No, I'm sorry. We have a delay. So there. Just explain this a little bit. So there's a book. If you have time, there's a book I believe you can get on Amazon, and it's called A Parcel of Patterns. And if you want more information, I actually put it in one of our newsletters. The reason that book is important is it's a little book. You can probably read it in a day or less. But it's a story taking you through what happens in an English town during the bubonic plague. And one of the things that was in there, this is in a time period after what I consider the true believing, real pastor shepherds were taken down by the English and replaced by the state church, the Anglican state church. And so part of this story, which you brought up, is what reminded me of it is, and we had the same situation with the Yellow Angels in China, because it was the Christians that were going out and providing and taking care of the sick people. This is going to be the same thing, and this book kind of explains. So the true pastors and the true believers is way I call them. They would go out and minister to the people. They would claim Psalm 91, and they would be the ones to be there and take the risk of being sick, etc. Whereas the state church, in that case in England, they did not. And they would just let the people die. They didn't do anything about it. And it was so bad during this plague that they actually, a lot of families would go ahead and dig their graves ahead of time because there wasn't enough grave diggers. So you know, let's say in the worst case scenario, the reason you would want to put someone in quarantine in your own home, let's say you have you have several family members. Well, there might be one person who is like, that is the person who's going to go in and minister to that person and their need, but that doesn't mean you have to make the whole rest of the house sick. I mean, if I have 5 kids, I don't want all 5 sick, you know? So
Right.
those are things you got to pray about. And that's where your faith and your good hygiene and all those other things that come into play. So we're not saying it's just one way or another way. We're just saying these are things that you have to consider. And everyone's situation is going to be different, and how the Spirit is going to lead you. What we don't want to do is walk out of stupidity and ignorance and fear, because those never are helpful. So
No.
yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up because those are scenarios. But if you get a chance, and we always did that as a read aloud with our family, because I thought it was a very good tool to teach, make you experience what it was like living through something like that. But it told a story, and it reflected the difference reflected the difference of the believers and how they handled it. So just something to consider. And again, they believe that the reason it's called the parcel of patterns is because that bubonic plague came through a parcel, a pattern of patterns that I think it was the pastor's wife had ordered. So it was just as simple as that.
Wow. Sounds like a great story. We'll have to check that one out. So have activities. People get stir crazy and isolation. Right now, there's a hotel in the Canary Islands that they have, I think, almost 1,000 guests, and they have them on medical lockdown.
Oh, wow.
Yes, people have just got this morning. Some people have not figured out it's time to change your thought patterns and your normal behavior. People are still booking cruises. They're still doing this. They're still going on trips. Oh, well, I did this. This is a time to really consider what is more important to me. Is it keeping that planned vacation, that cruise, and that whatever, that business trip or what have you? Or because you have to consider how are you going to handle it? If you're locked up in a place or quarantined in a place, and if you travel, then you've really got a whole different situation. And if you're at home, you're going to want to make sure that you have stuff to keep the kids busy, to keep yourself occupied. Stress is a big problem with immunity. So you want to make sure, like you said, we're not walking in fear. We're saying, I'm prepared. I'm trusting ultimately in my faith and in the Father and the Son, but I've done my part. And some of the things, make sure you have games and cards and books, not electric stuff, because we cannot count 100% on that being available. Have card games, have board games. Obviously, reading scripture is always an option. Good books and good, uplifting moral stories. Those are always good things to do as a family and keep yourself occupied. If you're in a true, really, really hard survival situation, you're going to be focusing on physical function. It's going to take physical work. It's physical work to do those things. Physical work to make food, physical work to make fire, physical work to clean clothes. But you will have some downtime, and certainly the children or whatever may not be participating in that depending on their age. Right now, do you have the infrastructure and ability to stay home? Can you talk to an employer? If you work outside the home, can you talk to an employer and say, what is your plan? If you're a factory worker, that's a little different because you have to go to make the parts at the factory. If you have a job where you can work from a laptop at home, it might be a time to say, go to your employer and say, do you have a plan to let us work from home should things get bad? Do you have, what is your provision? What is your ideas on this, or will you allow us to do that? Do you have backup daycare? Schools are closing. When China started closing universities, that's when I knew that's one of the key things I knew. That's a big deal because they don't close education. They're very, very education minded, and that's big money. So when those, and we're seeing now, there's certain key things that kicked off that this thing is really, really happening. We don't know, we can't, gauge all the causes and everything, but when you see governments evacuating citizens, that didn't happen in those other outbreaks. When you see universities closing, when you see businesses shutting down, when you see they're canceling the big ticket, big bucks, big celebrity type events.
Well, and just in my case, I do shipping almost every day for the essential oils and supplements and stuff that we do. And I mean, it's been about at least a month now. Just, the post office just has a sign. I don't think everybody sees this, but I see it online when I go to get my labels, is there's no shipping going to China. There's no mail going to China.
Right.
So, and that's something, just simple things like that. I'm like, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to get essential oils, but so far the country that exports and centers and brings all these oils from around the world and distills them is not on the list yet. And I'm hoping that that's not going to be a problem. So, which by the way, as of today, Suzette, the United States is number 8 on the list today.
Wow. For a number of outbreaks?
Yeah, it's on, which by the way, for those of you who have not been to this website, I like what they do every day or every other day, is Peak Prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, China, South Korea, and then the Diamond Princess, which, is an entity of its own, because all those people were out there on that cruise and got stuck. And then Italy, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, and now number 8 as far as a country. Because I didn't count the Diamond Princess as a country, even though it is on there. Yeah, we're number 8 now. And I personally, what I believe Father's been showing me the last 2 months is it's been out here for quite a while. And having lost my brother-in-law and seeing other people sick who can't talk or visit with me when I went to the funeral in Florida, and things that I've seen around, I believe we've got either this particular virus or something very close to it already going on. And we haven't been releasing the information. And we wanted to come out, and I've been trying to get information out, but, I have to do this fine line between, do I scream wolf or do I just kind of keep it low key because people think you're crazy? And I'd rather be crazy and be ready for a fake wolf. So, but I don't think that that's the case anymore. And we just don't know how bad it's going to get. So go ahead. We also remember this election year. It's all political too.
Real or not. And I mean, I think this is real. And they kept saying this is a bad flu season, right? We kept hearing it's a bad flu season, bad flu season. If it's not real, I have never seen governments and markets and things and businesses react and do the things. I don't know what's more scary, the real virus or it being fake, the level they're going to enact the fake, systems that they're doing. Either way, it's frightening. No matter how you look, not frightening to be afraid, but it's serious when you see the things they've done, shutting down airlines, shutting down flights, shutting down so much of infrastructure business. Like I said, even if it was fake, which I don't think it is, that's a lot to go through. And what they're planning, if that's the case, you still want to be ready for.
Right. Well, and I want to just point out, from the videos that we've seen from China and the Chinese people that we know, not just what's on the internet, but the Chinese people that people know, that see, some of these people are just dropping dead with no symptoms. And we have to understand that we don't think it's just the virus, because we also know that the 5G was implemented. That could, have the effect of just putting someone out. I've always known it's a weapon. It can be used as a weapon. And so we know it's a serious thing. And I mean, just personally, having lost a brother-in-law who was just sick a couple of days, and then, he's coming down with the flu, and then he's having difficulty breathing, and then within 12 hours, he's gone, and then I don't really want to bring her up, but we know we had a young lady who suddenly had a heart attack with the flu. And again, I was like, why didn't they publish what it was she had or didn't have? And then, we got nurse practitioners and doctors, I'm in contact with going, her symptoms were like SARS, and she had just traveled from Israel, so, and then when I go to Florida to the funeral, I got people who've been sick for 2 and 3 months. And then they said they were just diagnosed with walking pneumonia. I mean, we're not talking just one person. We're talking about 2 or 3 or 4 that I had contact with that I was trying to see in Florida. So it's a very real thing to me, and it's not normal. And it bothers me that they're not saying, oh, they had the such and such a flu when they died. I just don't think, and from the Dr. Cottrell and some other people that I've watched and listened to, they either don't test it, they don't have the testing kits, and then some of the testing kits that were sent out are giving false reports,
Right.
So, and then I will cover it, and we won't cover it in this particular part, but just to mention real quickly, I had taken the information about the Chinese protocol, and the first 2 things that they did as far as particularly for this virus was, number 1, your saturation rate of oxygen and your temperature. And that when you met 93% or less of your saturation oxygen rate, which is very simple to order one of those, an oximeter, and or your temperature was 99.15, they immediately started viral medications. In our case, we would do viral, antiviral herbs and oils. So it is a very, very serious thing. And I don't know that we can wake people up enough.
Right.
The big question is, how is it going to affect and change our lives? That's the thing that we're trying to get you to be prepared for. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So the other thing is quarantine. Now we know when they quarantined the W city, 5 million people had left before they enacted the quarantine. I don't know that governments will make that mistake again. That, they may have figured that out. That didn't work so well, or maybe that was, okay.
So
with
basically it was an evacuation, right?
It sounds like, if they announced it and then people go, but some people, they work out of town, like this hotel, the cruises. Even if you just work in a different town, if they put a quarantine in, I don't know what the protocol is. Do they slap down? Some of the cities and towns in China, they're like they had bulldozed the dirt up into the roads so that nobody could get to their towns. Do they give a warning? Hey, if you don't live here, get out by midnight. Who knows how that's going to play out? But if you live in a big city, all I can say is you really, really, really want to try to get out before quarantine. If you have anywhere to go, and that sounds rude because maybe that sounds irresponsible, because if you're contagious, you could be spreading the disease. If you think you are healthy, personally, if I've told my family members, if you need to get out, I don't care if you're sick, I'm not afraid of that. Just come home, but you need to have a plan to leave and what you need. So this is the bug out and travel list we're going to go over now. You do not want to be quarantined in a city if you can help it. There are videos coming out of China where they are boarding people inside their homes, and their stories, well, so-and-so somebody is taking them buckets of food, and they're hoisting them up on a rope in a bucket. Well, if everybody's boarded in, or if that person gets sick, is it the family members? Is it the city? Is it the government? Who's going to take care of those people? I'm not sure I trust that. The stories are people are starving. I've heard stories of, there was one video the other day where a healthcare worker was reporting that she was seeing them putting people in the body bags still moving. It sounds desperate. Either it's politically motivated cleansing, which could be, they could use it, real virus, politically cleansing. However, we know that governments and people react in ways, they use situations. So, and
then you have the factor of the people working that are probably panicking,
There's been, videos and pictures of them just breaking down and just, imagine dealing with that. And I cannot imagine it. So it's good if you can have your stuff ready. I would not have your stuff visible in your, visible in your car, but like in your trunk or whatever, where it's not able to see. But if you could have it pre-packed to a point, that's a good idea. Leave as if you cannot come back. This is something that with hurricanes and stuff like that, assume if you're leaving, you're not going to run back and find your marriage license and your jewelry and all of that stuff. You need to plan on leaving as if you are not coming back. Make sure you have your documents with you, your marriage license, your passport, your ID, anything that you really don't want to lose track of. Fuel in the car. Keep the fuel in the car. Water, again, that is critical. You have to have water. Have a filter with you so that you can filter the water if you come across water. Portable foods, clean your cupboards of what you can pack in the car that you think you could deal with on the road. Do you have beef jerky? Do you have snack foods? Do you, potato chips, things that can travel that you can store easily? Sleeping and camping equipment. Do you have a little camp stove? Pack your sleeping bags in there. You may be sleeping in your car for a while. Cash, again. It may be that you're going to have to travel or deal with people that you're not going to have the ability to use credit and debit. Barter items, if it comes down to it and I have to, get rid of some of my whatever bling to get, a loaf of bread, a tank of gas or whatever. So who cares? Self-protection. That we'll leave that up to, your decision on what that is. And there are laws and things, but, the reality is people do crazy stuff. Paper maps. I cannot stress this enough.
Instead of digital maps, right?
Yes. You should always have paper maps, local paper maps in your car, period. But if you're definitely got to travel somewhere, we are so dependent on the electronic stuff. We can't remember people's phone numbers anymore. We can't remember the directions because we're always using the machines to do it for us. Any food, again, that's easily portable and storable, and anything that would be of value or benefit on your trip or barterable or useful to the people or place where you're going. So in other words, if you're bugging out, don't show up empty-handed. If you don't leave, 10 cans of good tuna. Well, I mean, it might be Fukushima, but 10 cans of tuna in the cupboard at home, when you could have stuck it in your car, because anything like that is going to become precious especially if you're joining other people or places. Bringing something is good to do, and it may get you on your trip. Other considerations. Just in general for this virus, what is made in China? You need to think about what is made in China. I've started to now, when I'm looking at things, looking at the tag, this is made in China. Do I have it? Like, is my cell phone charger cord on the last leg? And a lot of that stuff, the electronics and things, are made in China. Do I need to make sure that I have one, pick one up, buy one, order one on Amazon, so that when the supply chains are drying up, I have that one item that, normally you can find that thing anywhere. But again, the manufacturing is shutting down. The supply chains are drying up. They are now, it sounds like China is starting to tell people to get back to work. But how bad is the virus? How many people have passed away that did that job? How are other countries going to be accepting those goods from China? We still just don't know how all that's going to play out. So think about your medical devices. A lot of durable medical, CPAP parts, things like that are made in China. Tools. They're saying car manufacturers are shutting down because, if that one part comes from China or, now Italy or Iran or wherever it may be made, you might not be able to make a whole pickup truck because that one part is made there and that part is not coming in. So think about things that maybe, I had a really good canner I got for like $5 somewhere. It's like a big 16 quart. Well, the gauge got broken. It got knocked over and the gauge got broken. I put it off for years buying that little gauge. Those are the kind of things that you say, okay, well, if I thought I might need to can food, I may want to make sure that I go find that part and not put off something I've been not fixing for 5 or 6 years. Because what if I need that item and that thing is going to not be available anymore? And even things that are not made in China that we know people are rushing to go get. Now that the CDC has come out over the last 2 days and said it is time, you need to be ready, there are still people, unfortunately, that are going to be, or fortunately, however you look at that, who are going to be just trying to live life as normal. There's a shutdown factor. They just want to go to work, put in their time, go to the game, whatever, come home, watch a movie, whatever it is. They are not going to do things, or they're going to rely on those of us that they know have prepared, and they're going to want to show up at the last minute. But a lot of people, encouragingly, when we now have announcements of bad weather and stuff in our area, I know the difference when I go in the store. And that's both frightening and encouraging because people do take it more seriously. But I know that even just for a storm coming through, I see empty sections of the store shelves. So, you need to know for your family, what can you afford and how are you going to deal with it? Some people are, they're not worried about the money. Well, that's not available for everybody. You have to really prayerfully think, what do I need? What do I really have to have? And what can I substitute? There's things you can do. Like, we talked about this, having durable disposables, having manual versions of things that are normally electronic or powered, or like a brace and bit, like an old brace and bit, that your grandpa used, instead of a drill. If you have to, erect a structure or whatever, those are the kind of things you want to think about. Do I have those things? It's a lot to encompass the kind of things you could use in a, the world is really turning upside down situation. Prayerfully consider it and think about how you live your life, what kind of things you do, what you have to carry on doing. So that was pretty much it. I have some notes I've taken. I love Dr. John Bergman. He has fantastic information on staying healthy, on, how do you just live a good, healthy life and keep your physical, emotional, psychological self in good order. He talks about the supplements needed and things like that. So he has some good videos on there, and he has been covering the coronavirus. And, there's a lot of really good, knowledgeable people. I'm interested. I can't wait for your stuff to come out. And you've done the flu and pandemic video that has a lot of good stuff on it.
Yeah. Well, and actually I did that a couple of years ago just because it was a common thing that moms and people need. And so we're getting ready to wrap up for now until we come back and do some more, right? So I was just going to say, so if you can either go to remnantremedy.com, go to, we have a YouTube channel also called Remnant Remedy. There's a lot of remnants, but Remnant Remedy, just type in Nitza, Nitza, or go to remnantremedy.com and you can scroll down and there's a click to videos and there's a click to articles and radio shows, etc. But if you go that route, besides going directly to YouTube, go to remnantremedy.com, click on videos, look for the video called Colds, Flus, Mold, Respiratory, and How to Anoint a Loved One. And I basically have an overview on how and what I would do to prepare for colds and things like that to take care of my family. And then I show you how I use those oils, and usually when we use Spice Defense, and we call it an anointing from head to toe, because that's really when you get into the biblical aspects and how that word shemen oil comes from, etc. We usually can, in most cases, whenever our people in our home or families get sick enough that, they're down and or they have a fever, we've gone anywhere from 20 minutes to 12 hours getting rid of the fever and breaking it 24. If the fever is getting really high, we know we're really dealing now with bacteria, then we'll maybe up the oregano. And usually within 3 days, and serious things that most other people go to the hospital for or doctors for, we've been able to take care of. And I go over some herbs, and the next one is going to be coming out. We're going to be recording this weekend. Is some things that you need to probably go buy now before it's too late. And I will just say this real quick: mullein, mullein. It's an herb you need. I tell you in the video basically how to use that, and those are things that you need to have. There's also an introduction to the first aid kit that we have, and so this information has been out there for quite a while because Suzette and I have been studying and learning this for 20, 30, 40 years. It's something we've done to learn when we came up, 20, 30 years ago, of homeschooling and learning how to take care and restore the art of this, and how to stay out of the system, and as far as, the expense and the effects from antibiotics, etc. How do we prepare for storms? We came from a generation where you prepared for feast or famine or storms or, catastrophe. I wasn't like so personally involved, but I mean, I even lived during the 70s when I was in Guam, and we had the refugees fly from, was it Viet Cong? When they came out of there, we were housing them on the floor in our house as they were flying to Guam overnight for a day or two before they could fly into camps in the U.S. So these things happen. They happen all around the world. Just most people don't get to see those kind of things happen, and we're definitely living in some precarious times. Also, Suzette, you are on Facebook?
Yes.
Right? Suzette Robinson?
Correct.
If you can find her or me, Nitza, Nitza, last name Moshe, Moshe. You can find us, contact us, message us, and we'll try to direct you where we can to help you get that information. And we're posting, we have that stuff posted out there. We share news, we share tips, we share whatever we can so that you guys can prepare to take care of your house and home and your family and not be totally dependent on, in this case, what may not even be available. Because I think that's the big thing we're learning from China, is not just so that we can avoid that and take care of ourselves. That might not even be an option for you. It's a pandemic. They cannot. It's like the hurricanes, the floods, the fires.
Right.
They can't take care of everybody. So
No.
the more self-sufficient that we are, the more that we can take care of ourselves, the more we can help our neighbors, our friends, the more we're going to be able to sustain this. So, is there anything else? You again, paintedtongue.com, and or if you can find us, we've posted some of those articles and radio shows. You can also get it through different avenues like that. So it's Painted Tongue, TONGUE.
Painted like I painted the house, and tongue,
Yeah.
TONGUE, like I bit my tongue.com. And it's a really simple website, couple links, PDF or PowerPoint, and the links to the radio show are on there. And I have a couple of links of some products that I do sell, and you can check those out, Tower Garden and Juice Plus. And
Oh, you do have those links on there. Good.
yep, they are on there. So, and oh yeah, plant seeds. I don't know how this is all going to play out. It's winter, but if you have a way to garden, because we know the food supply is going to be interrupted, we'll have to try to do another thing on Grand Solar Minimum and all the things it brings.
Right.
If you can,
Have you heard anything about the seed availability?
I know that for farmers, for large orders of seed, that's a problem. I get my straw from a local farmer, and he said that for some reason, he had bought extra corn this year. He said it was a blessing from the Lord. And after all the disaster and the flooding happened, the seller came back and asked him if he would sell his extra bags back, and offered him, 2, 3, 4 times the price. And he was like, nope. So we know, and he does something like 1,200 acres. That's, big farming. But there is a problem because of the crop loss we suffered last year because of all, it was a wet spring, so they had trouble getting in, and it was an early cold, freezing, wet, mucky mess to get out of the fields. So that's hit us from both ends, and that's happened globally, and that's a whole nother show. But
right. All of this is, yeah.
Yeah.
What is your favorite seed company, real quick? Because, since I've had to move to the city and I don't have the space to homestead like I used to, we don't, I'm not up on all that, what I used to do when we used to do the shows. Are you still using Baker Seeds, Rare Seeds, or do you have other companies that you recommend off the top of your head so that people can, worry about maybe getting some of this before too long?
I do. I like Baker Creek, and you recommended them. I really have used them for the last several years, but I buy them. It's like prepping. You go to the grocery store, you walk into the big box store, they got a seed display. There's some of those companies where it's 20 cents a pack. I will say, okay, let me just throw, 5 packs of seeds in my cart with, it's not a lot. Some of them are kind of expensive if you get into the heirlooms, and, they could be $3, $4 a pack, but you can find inexpensive ones. I like Seeds of Change because their packs are like hermetically sealed. So if you don't, if you want to get some ahead of time, they stock a long time. Annie's Heirloom Seeds, that's based out of Michigan. Those are good seeds. Baker Creek, Michigardner, he's got a big YouTube channel. His seeds are almost everything is 99 cents a pack, regardless of what it is. And he's got like 500 and some varieties.
And what's his name?
Mish Gardner. It's like my Gardner.
Because I know some of them changed. There's some new ones that I didn't know about. I mean, years ago we used to do a thing called Noah's Ark, but when we were planting them, the problems were a lot of those seeds weren't germinating. So we need to go with the ones that are been pretty tried and true, at least in the last 10 years, because some of the ones that were from farther behind aren't as good. And Baker seeds came up kind of in the midst of all that. So they've been around for quite a while now.
Pretty much anybody who does heirloom gardening or homesteading does Baker Creek. But there's other great companies out there too, and they don't all have every seed, and they will run out, and sometimes they're already out. So that's something to think. If you can, whatever you can do to be self-sufficient. And there were a couple scriptures that I wanted to share. Isaiah 13:14, and it shall be as the hunted gazelle and as a sheep that no man takes up. Every man turns to his own people, and everyone flees to his own land. This reminds me of the shutting down of the borders and people expatriating and countries flying their citizens back to their nation.
Oh.
Okay, Isaiah 26:20. Go, my people, enter your rooms and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little while, until the displeasure is past. 21. For look, Yah is coming out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their crookedness, and the earth shall disclose her blood and no longer cover her killed ones. Those are the verses that kind of have been on my mind of late with everything going on.
Well, the ones that have been on my mind are the ones, a prudent man sees evil days or evil time coming, and he hides. and there's actually quite a few verses in that area. The prudent man sees danger and takes cover is one of them, which is Proverbs 22:3. But the simple keep going and suffer the consequences is one of the translations. So yeah. So we want to pray before we get ready to leave. Are we ready for that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. You want to go ahead?
You want me to pray?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll finish up.
Dear Heavenly Father, Abba, thank you for this time together. Thank you for your the technology that you've given us to reach out to others. We ask that no one is put into fear or panic over this. We are only seeking for people to be prepared, to feel calm, to trust in you, that no matter what they can afford or can do or cannot do or what they may be able to get a hold of, that ultimately they trust you and they trust your Son, and they know that you have this, that you are sovereign. And regardless of what man plans and schemes and releases and does, that you are in control and that you will keep things under your discretion and according to your plan. And we trust that no matter what comes, you are with us. We ask you to guide every listener, that you help them to have calm and peace and shalom, to help them, direct them for what they should do, help them to ignore what they should not do, and help us all to be a light in the darkness that comes. B'Shem Yeshua.
Father, we just thank you for this opportunity while we still have it. We ask that you would prepare the hearts and minds of your people worldwide, Father, that we would be willing to live our lives even unto death to help others and to serve you, Father, that we will not fear death itself, and that we will have the strength and the courage to live life and not give up when the times are hard. And we just thank you that you would wake up the hearts and minds, and each person receiving this message will be able to hear your voice and have you direct them, and that they would respond. And we pray for your great mercy and your provision, Father, for each person, that no matter what the situation looks like, Father, it is a time to trust you even unto death, Father, to trust your word and your promises. We thank you and we praise you by the power of your name, character, and authority, Yeshua. Amen.
Amen.